Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Bold predictions for this Florida Gators program heading into 2024. Dill, at least in our minds, this is the best time of the offseason where, we all get the opportunity to call our shot heading into 2024. Now, before we get into our bold predictions, just want to say, would love to hear from you guys as well, whether you're knocking our bold predictions, whether you're agreeing with our bold predictions, or whether you have bold predictions of your own. We all have the opportunity to call our shot heading into 2024. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. And if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I can't tell you guys enough how much the support from the Florida Gator fans has meant to the fellas. It's been a blast talking this program over the last couple of weeks. We appreciate you guys. And Dill, without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with at least something to me that is a little bit counterintuitive to maybe some casual college football fans that might be listening to this. I think the pass catcher room for the Florida Gators, I think it gets better heading into 2024, and that might make some people scratch their head as you lose a first-round NFL draft pick in Ricky Pearsall. But as I look back at the 2023 season, it was awfully reliant on two pass catchers. Eugene Wilson as a true freshman, and Ricky Pearsall. When you start taking a look at the numbers, it was Ricky Pearsall with 900 yards. It was Eugene Wilson with 600 and change yards. The next leading pass catcher for the Florida Gators was Arlis Boardingham with less than 300. I think that just kind of speaks to the lack of dynamic playmakers that they had in the pass catcher room. And you kind of even look at the target shares. It was Ricky Pearsall, Eugene Wilson, both with over 70 targets. The next most targeted pass catcher was running back Montrell Johnson. So going forward into 2024, what excites me the most and kind of getting into my bold prediction, 3 pass catchers going for over 500 yards. Now the conversation is, what are those pass catchers going to be in 2024?
Yeah, I think 2 of them are kind of no-brainers. I mean, Eugene Wilson, Elijah Badger, both those guys aren't hovering around 1,000, if not more. I'd be really, really quite surprised. And that'd probably not be a good omen, frankly, for Florida and what their success of this season is going to be. I think the other side of that is, frankly, I think you need somebody to be more of a vertical threat. I thought last year, again, watching the way they like to run that offense with being able to run play action and run guys across the middle and get the ball into the flat to the playmakers like Eugene Wilson and Elijah Badger, who are so dynamic with the ball. I think they needed something to open up that field a little bit more, have someone who could consistently test teams down the field. In my initial lean always goes to younger guys. That's just, I look, they were starting to recruit really good or better at Florida. You have guys like Aiden Mizell. But at the end of the day, Chimere DK, in a similar way that I was very wrong on Graham Mertz, thinking, oh, he's a Wisconsin guy, just average, he is what he is. Graham Mertz proved me wrong. I think Chimere DK, if you go back to the 2021 year and see some of the plays he was making, he might be a guy who I think a lot of people, including myself, probably are sleeping on.
As Michigan fans, we can speak to that firsthand. And I think it's important to mention who was throwing him the football during that 2021 season. It was quarterback Graham Mertz. So there's that inherent chemistry there. And I think it's pretty clear. I think Billy Napier certainly agrees with you. Why did they go get Tremere DK in the transfer portal? He's a guy that averages over 15 yards per reception, a guy that excels working vertically down the field. If you were to ask me who my pick was, and I'm kind of with you, I always gravitate to the young talent. We'll talk about Aiden Mizell in just a second, but Tremere DK is probably that third wide receiver that I think goes over 500 yards. Now, Aiden Mizell is a fascinating story because I think we all wanted him to be elite as a true freshman. He was one of my freshman spotlight guys heading into 2023. I think we kind of didn't recognize that there was some physical development that needed to take place with Aiden Mizell in terms of dealing with physical cornerbacks in the SEC, putting hands on him. I think going into year 2, you've seen that body composition change. He's a big, long athlete that has some big-time burners. He's a guy that can give you that vertical threat. I do think he's one of those wide receivers that steps up in 2024, certainly could be a guy that you look up and say he went over 500 yards in the 2024 year. I would say Arlis Boardingham as well. I think that's a really talented tight end pass catcher where if you do get some of those wide receivers emerge as vertical threats, that middle of the field starts to open up a little bit more. That's where Graham Mertz likes to operate. I could see Arlis Boardingham having a big-time year as well. And kind of pivoting to our second bold prediction, Graham Mertz going over for 4,000 yards. And I think that would make a lot of people scratch their head. I look at Graham Mertz and how productive he can be in 2024, and I feel comfortable making this prediction for a couple of different reasons. One, I think the mentality in the offensive coaching staff and Billy Napier, I think it changed after that South Carolina game. I think they went into 2023 kind of viewing Graham Mertz probably closer to how you viewed him, as a game manager that's going to be a steady hand in the quarterback room. After that South Carolina game where he kind of goes off, they win that game on the road, the mentality in terms of how they treated Graham Mertz as a quarterback, it changed. And I think that carries into 2024. Florida is going to ask Graham Mertz to be a quarterback that just doesn't lose games. They're going to ask him to go win games in 2024. And I think as a result of that, I think you see a massive year from Graham Mertz in 2024.
Yeah, I think part of that, frankly, increase in comfortability by the end of the year. But also, I thought there was an element of him just being like almost settled in and making plays more.
Agreed.
Than he was. I think for a second I was like, "Whoa, why can't this guy avoid sacks? What's going on with some of those pressures?" It just felt like he wasn't kind of making plays in the early part of that year. And then by the end of it, you look at that Missouri game, a really, really good defense. Like he was making legitimate plays. And again, I think you always knew he had that ability to make the plays he was supposed to make. That's kind of what I thought he was brought in to Florida to do. But I did think there was an element that by the end of the year, he was starting to be a bit of a playmaker. So I think that combined with the fact that I think, again, a second year more comfortable in the system, the emergence of a guy like Eugene Wilson, I thought had a big part in, frankly, his Graham Mertz improvement. So I think a lot of things came together. Those things you look forward should just kind of build on themselves, if you will. I think he can have a big year because, again, I thought there were some moments where I was like, this is a legit playmaking quarterback, not just game manager.
Now, to be fair with the sacks and pressures, I think a lot of that had to do with the Florida Gators offensive line, too. As much as like, hey, Graham Mertz maybe needs to get the ball out a little bit quicker, that offensive line was leaking, and it was leaking in a major way. That's kind of another reason why I'm a believer in Graham Mertz. I think this offensive line, specifically at the tackle spot, gets significantly better. Now, the Florida Gator fans remember me pounding the table in 2023 saying, let Graham Mertz push the ball down the field. And a lot of the smart Florida Gator fans in the comment section were saying, hey, pal, it's hard to push the ball down the field. Let those longer route trees develop when your offensive line can't pass protect. I think not only are they going to ask Graham Mertz to push the ball down the field more in 2024, but I also think because this offensive line gets better in pass protection, they're going to have more opportunity to do so as well. So that's another reason I'm a believer in Graham Mertz heading into 2024. Going to the defensive side of the football, the Florida Gators were 124th in the country, allowing 6.5 yards per play. I expect that to get significantly better in the 2024 season for two reasons. One, I think year two with Austin Armstrong, that's going to be absolutely massive. You look at Austin Armstrong, he comes in to take over this Florida Gators defense. It is an extremely complex defense. And on top of that, it was an extremely young Florida Gators defense. You look at starting multiple true freshmen in the back end, guys like Bryce Thornton and Jordan Castell, starting multiple true freshmen, or at least playing multiple true freshmen on the defensive line. Guys like Kelby Collins, till to me last year, it felt like Shamar James was the veteran of this Florida Gators defense. He was a second-year kid, only going into his third year in 2024. The combination of this Florida Gators defense getting more comfortable in Austin Armstrong's system, as well as just seemingly running it back with this same defense, just everybody being a little bit more experienced and more comfortable in the system, I expect a really big step from this Florida Gators defense in the 2024 year.
I think the most obvious avenue to doing that is, frankly, just being able to limit big plays. I mean, that's such a huge part of why this Florida defense's yards per play was so high, and their inability to be consistent and prevent teams from scoring was so poor. I mean, you kind of see that's a trend. If you follow college football closely and you see these new coordinators taking over and installing new systems, it's almost like, I mean, you look, Ohio State with Jim Knowles, Oklahoma with Brent Venables, Michigan with Mike McDonald. All three of those defenses ended up being really, really good defenses. Oklahoma made some big steps last year. Ohio State obviously turned into one of the better defenses this year. You saw that improvement, and a big part of it was, frankly, limiting big plays because all those teams had big issues with that in the first year.
And again, I think them being more comfortable and being older is certainly going to help in that department. Going to number 4, and I think this is a massive storyline. Till I was looking at some – I feel like I knew this, but I'm stunned every time I see this stat. How many interceptions did the Florida Gators have in the 2023 year? The answer was 3. And I think that is, it's almost impressive that Florida won 5 games, forcing that little turnovers. They were 126 in takeaways in all of college football, almost dead last, 0.6 turnovers per game forced. You look at Austin Armstrong, I think one of the more fascinating storylines heading into the 2024 season is Austin Armstrong in 2022 at Southern Miss before he came to Gainesville. That Southern Miss defense had 17 interceptions. The Florida Gators defense in 2023 had 3. So kind of piggybacking off just this defense being a little bit more experienced, I expected takeaways to take a massive step in the right direction in 2024 as well. And you talk about winning in the SEC when the margins are so small, those game-changing plays matter so much. Florida didn't make them in 2023. If they can make them in 2024, again, that's a massive, massive storyline for this Gators defense heading into the fall.
And I don't know exactly what to call this, but frankly, I think a big part of making more or creating more turnovers is being able to be a little bit more disruptive up front. Because last year, I thought they were so reliant on Princely U and what he could do. And again, he racked up some of his numbers for sure. But across the board, pockets were pretty clean for the most part. Because again, I don't think they were rushing the passer well at all as a unit. So I'm going to say one thing. I think if you don't see one of these young guys step up and make an all-SEC team, whether it's second, third, first, whatever it's going to be, I think that'll make the seat really hot. And I think that's probably a universal thing. If you don't see some guys like Shamar James or a guy like obviously a TJ Searcy or a Kelby Collins, Cameron James, those type of guys go up and play really, really good football, I think that to me would be really concerning. But also I think that's how Billy sees.
We've kind of talked about it. That's how Billy Napier, I think, is the head coach in 2025. Like you seeing the development of some of the young talent on this roster. I'll kind of add another bold prediction, kind of just on the fly right here. A newcomer to this Florida Gators defense is going to be an all-SEC caliber guy. Whether that's Joey Slackman, a guy that you heard really good things during this offseason from Gainesville out of him. You go back to the transfer portal, this was a kid that was coveted. I shouldn't call him a kid because he graduated. He might be older than me. This was somebody that was coveted by every single program across the country. Our Michigan Wolverines were going after Joey Slackman hard. We have one of the better interior defensive lines in all of the country. I think that speaks to how these Power 5 programs, Power 4 programs now view Joey Slackman. And so I look at Joey Slackman as a guy that, again, at the very least, providing some much-needed depth to Florida on the defensive line, but some high upside pass rush from the inside. Pup Howard, another guy that is screaming traits. And even true freshman LJ McCray, if there's a guy that we feel kind of good about coming in as a true freshman, being a difference maker, it could be LJ McCray. So I think another bold prediction is a newcomer on this Florida Gators defense becomes an all-SEC caliber player for this defense heading into 2024. We'll close it out on that. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We can talk to you guys later. Peace.